Mark, you're in the dark there.
Oh, I'm in the dark? Oh, yeah. Maybe I gotta put my camera.
There you go.
Oh, no.
Yeah, we'll get started in another moment or so. I'm not sure if Dylan started the recording yet or not, but just waiting on John Paul or Jimmy so we can have enough for a quorum.
Anybody spend the day outside?
No.
Unfortunately, I spent quite a bit of it outside with
Oh no.
kids dropping them off and picking them up, and it was cold.
Yeah.
At one point, it was with the wind chill. It was -9 degrees.
Supposed to
Well,
be.
John Paul had turned his house way down, the heat, so I went over. Nothing was frozen, but he was a little worried about it.
He keeps it pretty cold anyway.
Yeah. Well, it was cold. But I said, you want me to turn it up? Nah, it's okay. Famous last words.
Did anybody hear if John Paul was going to be joining us tonight?
I did speak with him earlier. He thought he was going to try.
Okay.
I mean, I can text him and say we could really use you for a quorum.
Or if Kathy wouldn't mind, Jimmy, if she is. Thank you. What'll happen in the absence of a quorum if we don't have it? We won't be able to vote on anything, but we could still hear the funding request from the groups, and we could talk to them.
Okay. We could probably.
Be able to vote.
Could we do another meeting if we had to on, like on the night of the council meeting or something? Or how do you want to try to do that? We'll hope somebody comes on.
Yeah.
Be a lot easier.
Yeah, and yeah, especially where these guys have taken the time out of their day to join us. Is my screen starting to flash? I think I'm starting to lose my drive.
Yeah.
All right. I'll have to have IT look at it tomorrow. All right. Mark, do you want to get started and we can take attendance and we can just jump right down to option number 3, and if Jimmy or John Paul come on, we can jump back like we did the last time.
Yep, no problem.
Thank you.
Call to order the Community Economic Development Committee meeting for Monday, March 15th, 2021. Roll call. Rob Carmichael, absent. Ron Russell, present. Jim Morrison, absent. Frank Dunbar, absent. John Wardwell, absent. Kathy Downs, present. Dick Peterson, present. John Paul, present. And Jim Boothby, absent. And myself, Mark Eastman, present. And do you want to move down to number 3, Rich? The funding request for Friends of Fort Knox?
Yeah, let's do that. We can. John Paul has just signed on. We can jump back to the minutes. Let's get through Dean so Dean can go enjoy that birthday party.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks for coming forward, Dean.
Yes, thanks for having me. So did everybody get a chance to look at the budget? Are there any questions with the budget for this year? Friends?
I didn't have any. Did anybody else have any questions?
Can you guys see that? I presented it on my screen for you. It should be coming up.
Yep.
So the first one that you're looking at is the $4,000 request. What usually is $1,800 turned to $2,000 last year. and this year it's 4,000. Why did you go up, Dean? Well, this money will be compiled with other monies. It's probably going to be about $35,000 is what I'm estimating for replacement of the LED. I'm sorry, we don't have a LED upgrade to LED from the metal halide lights. If anybody's looked at the fort, there's only like 3 of them that are actually still working. We can keep replacing the bulbs and ballasts to the tune of about $300 to $400. There's the ones that are doing the wash on the enrockment. Those are all working. They're above ground. I'm in a bit of a pickle and a fight with the state and the SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office. Everything I do has to be state historically approved, the SHPO office approved. So this is an endeavor that I hope to accomplish this year. I tried to do it last year. I tried to get, I still have some, I haven't even scoped this, in all honesty. I get the state to approve it. When they approve it as a project for this year, then I go forward and I put monies towards it. But if it's not on their list, then I don't get to apply our capital improvement funds. I'm looking to get another $25,000 from the Davis family. I'm looking to probably put in about $4,000 ourselves, Friends of Fort Knox, with the capital improvement dollars, and then Bucksport normally gives $1,800. This is, I think we got $2,000 last year. This is $2,000 or $2,200 over the years prior, with the intent of replacing 28 lamps. Not the ones that are on the wash. Maybe those, they're above ground. Those are also metal halide, but those don't have as notorious a problem. The problem I have is the lamps that are in the ground right now are at ground level. They're metal halide. The water intrudes upon them. It bursts the lamps, the ballast, or the casing. And water gets in there, so I want something above ground. Well, SHPO doesn't want that. So everything that I'm talking about right now is contingent upon a couple of versions. One would be an in-ground version, one would be a just above ground version, one would be an above ground version. Again, all of those to the tune of about $35,000. Has to be SHPO approved. Once SHPO approves it, then the state will approve it. State approves it first, lets me go forward with getting this scope, then SHPO approves the course of action, the plan that I'm going to do, one of those 3, and then I can put it to bid, contract it, and rip out the existing product and put in a new one, LED. 4,000 is the contribution that I'm looking for from Bucksport for this year. Is there any questions with that? So seeing none, Rich, moving to the next, or is there a vote on this one first? Or do I need to be off camera for votes?
No, you don't need to be off camera, Dean.
Okay. All right.
Rich, how do you want to do this? Do we want to vote on it individually or come back to them?
Dean has 2. Can you hear me? Am I mute?
Yep, you're good.
Okay. Dean has 2
Requests.
2 requests in there, so I'll leave it up to the committee if you'd like to do one at a time, or if you'd just like to hear them both.
Rich, I had a question for Dean.
Okay, sure.
So, what if it doesn't get SHPO approved, Dean? Then what happens?
And that's a great question, because what I'm really afraid might happened to me last year with two-step. Knox Masonry was still working on the project into December. What I can't tell, and if I have to return the funds, absolutely, that's what I got to do. Or can it stay earmarked for this project, which will ultimately get approved? It's just getting SHPO to get on board, and then I've got to bring in the, I hate to say it like this, but bring in Carol Weston and start her, forgot his name. Oh my goodness. Kim Rosen's husband, Rick Rosen. Those people are powerhouses, and they actually have a lot of sway, and we will persuade SHPO one way or another to approve a plan, whether it's an in-ground plan. But the problem is the delay that's going to happen is I may not be able to break ground. That's what I'm worried about. I'll at least have the scope, which the scope is probably going to cost $4,000 by itself. The scope of the project to be able to determine, Dean, what's what you got to do here? You got 28 lamps, but you'll only need 14 if you do my way with twice the loom. I don't know any of these things. I'm making stuff up right now, but somebody said that if you backed the lenses away from the wall, you could do it with half the lamps. And that's the problem that I have no idea, because I'm not an expert at engineering and light. The $4,000 that Bucksport provides, whether it's this year or even into next year, I'm going to spend at least $4,000 getting the scope done to the SHPO approved project. Whether groundbreaking happens this year, that's what I can't guarantee once the frost gets in the ground, or if we get to hold fright. My whole free schedule is gone. I have no more free time in late September, early October. And so I wouldn't be able to dedicate all my efforts towards this. I would carry that project over. It would have been approved. It's just awaiting the ground to thaw so that we can get to work, but it would have been put to bid, and the bid wins through the state process. So I still plan on doing it. It just might turn from a 2021 project to a 21/22 project, if there's any problem with that.
Does anyone else have any questions for Dean?
Well, just to be clear, Dean, you have to do the plan, and you need the money for that now anyway, right?
Anyways, it's going to cost about $4,000 to get it.
Regardless of.
Yep.
So that would go forward this year.
That part of it, I could spend these funds this year just on the scope of work. I just didn't want you to get the promise that, Dean, it's October, where's our lights? And there's that delay that it may not realize it this year.
Any other questions for Dean?
Seeing none, why don't we take a vote on this, since this is all fresh, and then we can move on to his second request.
Sure. Are we just gonna do a straight up vote, Rich, or do we need a motion and a second with this?
Yeah, let's make it all official.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Motion passes.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you. So this next one, last year, I got caught up in the process of trying to put fireworks on behalf of the chamber because of the way that things were going to go down. I had done the coordination with getting the guy on the property, and I show him where it is, and I get the fire marshal permits and stuff like that from at least my side of the river. Excuse me, that fell flat. I ended up talking to the gentleman, and he understood because of COVID, everybody was canceling. This year, I can't afford, as in past years, I can't afford to put on a display, but I'm willing to do all the work that the chamber did in the past if the town of Bucksport's willing to fund it. And Rich said, well, when do you want to do it? And I said, this is in all honesty, I have no ulterior motives. I'm not even sure I'm going to have tattoo this year, which would have been a nice 4th of July celebration we could have done right at that, around that weekend. You don't want to do it on 4th of July weekend. You're competing with Bangor and a couple others. So when do you want to do it? Well, I'm having Civil War weekends in July, the 2nd and 3rd week in July. I'm not saying let's do it then, but that's when I'm going to have heavy push like we used to have with Pirates. So if there's a weekend, that would have been a Bucksport Bay Festival weekend. And if the town of Bucksport would still like to do a parade, I'm going to throw this out there. I'm talking to all those reenactors, and they said, absolutely, Dean, use us in any way you need to. So I've got commitment from some groups of reenactors for both the 2nd and 3rd weekend. I actually have the 1st weekend in July, which is July 2nd and 3rd, I believe. I'm sorry, 2nd is a Friday. And I got this group called a Half Moon Jug Band. They're committed to performing. Remember how we were going to do this before Port Loop? We were going to have all these concerts down by the water and all that. These guys will do a Friday and a Saturday night performance, either at Fort Knox or one at Fort Knox and one over in the Bucksport side. I haven't talked to anybody. Rich doesn't even know this. It's kind of getting surprised right there. I've got a Half Moon Jug Band lined up for 2 nights. It's going to cost me $250 in travel expenses and hotel. And I said I might be able to get some hotel to even donate in-kind donation. Let me work on that. I don't know what the interest is from Bucksport, but they're committed to 2nd and 3rd of July. Then we got the Civil War encampment 9th and 10th beginning the Friday 9th, going all the way until the 18th. What do you mean? I mean, those 2 weekends and every day in between, that I can get as many Civil War reenactors to concentrate in Fort Knox. I'm going to be pushing the Civil War encampment as a 10, 12-day affair with a kickoff on the 9th and 10th and a finish off on the 17th and 18th. The Sunday, the 18th, they'd be going home. What's really going to happen is I'm probably going to have multiple groups doing both those weekends, 20th Maine on one weekend and 3rd Maine on another. I've got the 6th Artillery. There's going to be cannons going off again. Those guys love watching fireworks. They're all about, that's an attraction for them. They're going to try to get a New York group coming up, because if I can piggyback it with tattoo or fireworks display, it becomes a recruiting tool to get even more people to come watch the fireworks from Fort Knox, a Civil War authentic fort, and they're going to do fort activities. So third, he's talking about the second weekend right now, the 16th, 17th, and 18th. So that, I'm sorry, third weekend in July. That's when I've told Atlas and Central Maine Pyro about the fireworks would be either, and we can work through this a little bit better as we know, as you know that you want to do a parade, as you know that you can get somebody to do Bucksport Bay Festival, as you know that you have a synchronized another concert or whatever. Civil War encampment is both the second and third weekend. The third weekend looks like the big show, to wrap it all up, and they would fire either on a Friday or a Saturday night. Here's the kicker, though. I've looked at 2 organizations, the only 2 that really fire fireworks. One was from last year, who would have done it. He's done it before, CMP, Central Maine Pyro. And he said similarly that it's not really how much, he can't give me an estimate. He can give, I tell him, it works this way. How much money you got to spend? My daughter's getting married. I have $4,000. Well, that'll get you a 15-minute show with what's called 3-inch rockets, 3-inch mortar, or a 15-minute show with 4-inch mortar. Well, what if I spend $4,500? That's a 4-inch show for 15 minutes, or a 5-inch. It's kind of a la carte a little bit, and it's weird. It's backwards, where you tell them what your budget is, and they tell you what can fit in that budget, and you just got to take the word for it. I asked for $4,500. Where'd you come up with that number? I'm pretty sure that's what we were going to fund. Bucksport, the town of Bucksport was going to fund last year, and I shot in the middle ground, which I thought was between $4,000, $4,200, and what I thought would be a price increase anyways, because you're competing. And again, one more time, if this goes with the 4-port loop, you can actually upgrade your show. Instead of having 2 weekends of fireworks, you can just, this will be the contribution by town of Bucksport, and then you can have a 30-minute show or 20-minute show, 25-minute show of 5-inch rockets. They actually go up from there, go all the way up to a 5-inch rocket. He says 5 inches is just really, that's Disney World. Nobody in Maine really does that. Most of them are 4-inch rockets. So that was my research. Go ahead.
I was going to say, what that basically means is a 4-inch rocket will go up 400 feet in the air, and it'll have an outward burst of 200 feet. So for every inch of the rocket, times that by 100, and that's how many feet it goes up. And multiply by 100 and divide that in half, and that's how far wide the display goes.
The burst.
The burst, thank you.
And so
Any
I can
questions?
find out more information. We can be very loose on that one if you'd like. Sorry, I interrupted again. A rain date, if you do it on a Friday and it kicks over to a Saturday, that's the rain date kickover. That happens in the same weekend. There's no extra charge. If we have to cancel altogether because COVID comes into play and we end up having gatherings no larger than 100 people or something, and it's not worth doing, perhaps we could, this is, I'm gonna single you out, Rich, because I wasn't sure what events, but I am really hopeful we can have Fright this year. And so my other alternative, if Bucksport didn't have another date in mind, would be to wait until October and then do it in one of the Fright at the Fort weekends in conjunction with that. It doesn't make me any money, just so you know that too, folks. My fort is closed. I get no more money really out of this doing an after-hours event unless I have an after-hours event like the Half Moon Jug Band or like fireworks viewing from the tower, which I can only put so many people up there. It's not even worth doing because they don't rotate like they do during the day. I don't make that much more money if it's an exclusive after-hour event. It's not for me. It's for the town of Bucksport. They leave my facilities, go over, get something to eat because there's going to be a fireworks show later that evening. That's how that's going to benefit us both.
And how this came up is because Dean has the fort. It made more sense and not to put any additional work on my plate, but Dean has all the requirements. He knows everything that needs to happen on that side, and we can plan it around one of those events. And like he said, it's shot after hours, so the fort doesn't make any money off of our firework display. It's basically for the benefit of the patrons of Bucksport and the visitors. And we've funded fireworks in the past with the Bucksport Bay Chamber of Commerce for Bay Festival, and it's roughly about anywhere between $4,500 and $5,000.
And if I can use that as an opportunity, I don't know whether you want to go up from there. Your budget is your budget. And what I tried to give you was what Rich talked about, the size of the rockets and the amount. He said he can make it last half an hour if you want to. They have 5 minutes between the bursts. But the 3 and 4 inch rockets, if those are your largest ones, those are typically the finale. There's something mixing in between. This $4,500 price tag, that's about what we would have gotten last year, and probably the same thing as you've seen in years past. It's right around that same length. And I'll shut up now so you guys can talk.
Does anybody have any questions for Dean?
I have a question for the fireworks expert. Okay,
Which one's that?
that's going to be Rich. He's the only one that understands what's going on. Okay, and so we've had several years with great fireworks, and there was one year where you had outstanding fireworks or something. And Rich, really, where is the sweet spot moving forward on this? Is it 4,500, 5,000, 5,500? Where's that sweet spot today? Because price has gone up. Things cost more.
So the outstanding firework display you're talking about was the year of the 225th celebration for the town of Bucksport. That was a $10,000 display. Unfortunately, I wasn't in town. I missed it, but I did get the phone call the next morning that the fort was on fire. But I put it up in Taco.
I would point out one little thing before we do this vote. Whether you know it or not, today is the state of Maine birthday.
Yes.
It was incorporated on March 15th, 1820. Part of the Missouri Compromise.
It's been delayed. The 2020, we were getting ready for that this time last year, and I heard that same thing, that the bicentennial. Are we going to try to pick that back up again? Because that's another one of those question marks that I haven't heard much about, the Fort Loop, and we won't for another month probably, right?
Well, you really wonder because, President Biden said he's hoping that everybody can have a giant celebration on the 4th of July. So I don't know whether that'll include picking up the bicentennial for Maine or not.
I'm trying to stay with my ear to the ground on that one, but everybody's kind of walking cautiously. The news that just came out from the governor saying that the March 23rd and May 23rd dates of the 50 and 75% and 100% indoor-outdoor capacity, all that has actually caused a wave of interest that wasn't there. I was going to have a very flat season, and even the state of Maine that I got to ask permission from, they're hesitant, but I think the Maine Tourism Association and the Maine Office of Tourism, those two are gearing up, but everybody's behind the curve, and you can't lean that far forward. Nothing really in May. June is going to be weak, and July sounds like it's going to be gangbusters, but everybody's going to be seeking the same availability of lack of resources.
Right.
And that's why we can get behind this one. If we can actually have this one ping to a weekend, and if the Fort Loop happens on the 4th weekend, we can still move it to the right. I think that's what's actually going to happen if COVID comes back through and causes delays or reduced crowd size.
Any other comments?
I just think we should be asking for about $1,000 more to make sure when we go to celebrate, we can really celebrate. I mean, everybody's going to want to come out for this thing. And I see only positive. I don't see any negative out of this at all.
I would agree with that too.
You have a motion, Dick?
I have one comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
And this is not meant to be that I don't think this is a good idea, but I think we need to somehow stat what this does mean to the town. You know, it's not going to help us in deciding today, but it may help us decide in the future that we want to put more money or less money into something based on how, you know, the impact it has for the merchant, the impact it has for the community.
Well, I would agree with that. It's all about the show. So
So
when the
in
show's
that vein,
good, people show up.
I
How do you-
do think, though, that Dean's point about, you know, the Civil War parade and something like that, it's unique, it's new, it's different. I think probably almost anything out there is going to be well received. But if you pick a date that's different when everybody else is going to do it, and it's unique to boot, that could be a big boon for the town, for sure. Especially if you know, tried to do other things at the same time. It made it even more attractive, tied it into the merchants.
and I'll remain flexible. The Civil War weekends are those weekends. The one after that, another viewing if I can get away with that on the fourth weekend. That's not going to draw crowds. The Ghost Tour, and then Christmas in July. What's that, Dean? What I'm looking to do is we didn't have a great Christmas this past year, so why can't we start a little early and bring a little Christmas joy? And if I can get Christmas in July craft fair brought to Fort Knox that fourth weekend, these are kind of some of the things that I want to work hand in glove with the town of Bucksport. I want to support. I don't have any eateries. I don't have any hotels on my side of the river. That's where they're going to go if they're going to come. And I am going to have a better attendance, probably. I mean, they'll also go to Belfast. They can also get Camden, Castine. But if we have these events and I get this on community calendars and I can do this Christmas in July, all it is a craft fair. It's nothing really special. But the weekend after that is Shakespeare in the Park, Shakespeare Under the Stars. And it's another comedy. It's the $10 theater. I've got events every weekend in July. And that's where if the town of Bucksport decided they want to do a parade on this day, or they want to have their own Christmas in July craft fair, and they take that off my plate. I don't really need all the extra projects to work on all these things. If the town of Bucksport is able to come through and the vendors, the merchants want to do something down by the waterfront that's not Bucksport Bay Festival quality, but it's at least a craft fair with vendors and stuff, and that can get thrown together, and it coincides with the fireworks, and everybody wins because they're staying on your side of the river. They're going to come to, but everyone need to get on our side of the river, so they have a full day of enjoyment rather than just a half day and then go off to Acadia.
Any other comments? Anybody want to make a motion on Dean's proposal?
I'd like to make a motion. We increase it to 5,000.
Okay. We have a motion. Is there a second?
A second.
Okay. All in favor? All opposed? Are you in favor, Kathy? Okay. All right. Thank
That'll
you,
pass
Dean.
unanimously. Dean, thank you very much for your time. Please go enjoy the birthday
Thank
party.
you. Actually, real quick, I don't know whether Ron needed me. He's already
No,
presented.
I'll put words in your mouth, Dean. We had a lengthy conversation about
We
it.
did.
And I'll pass that along. So
You're gonna hear it from me. I support Ron's proposal. I'm already behind it. We had a very lengthy conversation, and I don't need to stay online to just hear you have more of Dean's show. It's Ron's show at this point. So thank you all. I appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Dean.
Thank you, Dean.
Okay. Have a good night.
What Dean was talking about is new business, but I think now really what you would like to do is have the request, Main Street Buck Sports.
Yeah.
So Main Street Bucksport would like to request continued funding from the town at the level of $20,000. And what I would say is, despite the pandemic, I think we've remained relevant in the town. Of course, with everybody, it became a real challenge because one of the things we did was events, and events couldn't happen over the last year. So, but our mission is to create a vibrant and viable downtown. And so it seemed appropriate that what we needed to do was try to keep our merchants alive, because we're not going to have a very vibrant downtown if we didn't do that. So the program that we came up with was Bucks. That was the new program. We also had an abbreviated Kids on Main. We also continued to, we turned the film festival into a virtual festival, and it went off okay. The Kids on Main was abbreviated, but we had it socially distanced on the waterfront. We also continued with grant applications, and the Museum in the Streets was, we raised almost all the funds we needed. We went to the town for the remaining funds, which they did fund. So that is being implemented right now. The outdoor artwork, we received a grant from that. That's when the weather turns, that'll happen, the next stage of that. That's an ongoing project. We did apply for the original PPP loan. We were granted that. We used that money to fund our operation, including Bucks. And then we did a round 2 of that, raising matching funds against a donation from the town from the Silvernail monies. So our plan is to, the other thing we've done is we've had a number of meetings with the town because we're changing, our executive director is, Brooke has moved on, and we're hiring another one. So with the chamber not being around, we thought that, and the marketing plan having been approved for the town, that it was very important that the work we do would be in conjunction with the efforts of the town as well. So we've had, I guess, 2 meetings about that. We have a search committee now looking for an ED. That's in its final stages. Soon we'll be setting up interviews. Kathy's agreed to join that committee to be a representative of the town, as well as Rich. I think you're gonna, have we talked to you, Rich, or? Oh, we haven't. Well,
Let me know.
We also have a representative from the credit union that'll sit in on those. And our plan going forward, since events still are iffy, we canceled the Arts Festival. One, because of most of the artists needed a pretty long timeline to sign up. We had done it in March before, but I have spoken with Kathy James, and she's still very interested in trying to have that come off. So while we have no plans to go forward with it, I think it's still a wait and see on maybe something that we could get done this year. But I think the most important effort for us, since Bucks is due to run out on the 31st of this month, and we put out about 3,400 of those coupons, which brought in over in excess of $60,000 worth of business. And we raised approximately, see, John Paul, the first time 16,000, I think. And the second time we did 16, but that was about 6,000 more that we raised directly and the 10,000 that the town kicked in. It might have been a little more than that. It might have been closer to 7,000. So what we will do going forward is try to coordinate better with the town so that the work that we're doing supports the new marketing plan, supports our mission, and we've had some good discussions about how that might go forward. But this past year, we gave a budget and we included the bucks in there. We didn't quite reach what we have in the past. Our budget's been about 60,000 with 20,000 of that support coming from the town. But with the bucks program, we were at 52.6. So hopefully going forward, we can do even better than that. We do have an application for a grant into the Maine Community Foundation right now. I think that's gone in, John Paul, right?
Yes, yeah, the February 15th deadline on that. And
right, and we have applied for and been granted a second PPP loan. So we'll have those funds as well. And our plan is still to find a part-time executive director as a driving force behind the organization. It would be very difficult for us to do what we do with an all-volunteer organization at this point, especially since the events were a source of income. And while I do think they will start back up, it's still iffy what can be done at this point, as evidenced by Dean. He has a big agenda, but we don't know. So, and the next program that I'll propose after this, or is maybe for everybody to think about, would be worked in conjunction with Dean.
Okay. So in regards to the funding, does anybody have
questions?
questions for Ron?
Not a question, but if I can interject on the Bucks. If any of you haven't had the opportunity to speak to any of the local vendors about Bucks, I would extremely encourage you to do so. I had a conversation. Lou, Caitlin, and I had lunch with the Friars, and Brother Don just was raving about the program and could not explain how much money and how much Bucks helped the Friars. Catherine James back in November said it was her best November since she's moved to Bucksport. So although there weren't any activities, no group put on any activities, nowhere in the state had any activities, I think the Bucks was worth its weight in gold. And something similar or what Ron's proposing tonight might be the next step forward for that. And again, without having a Chamber of Commerce, that's one less group to help. And it's the reason why I went with Dean in regards to the fireworks. Thank you.
Yeah, the good thing about the Bucks is it was weighted in favor of the restaurants in the first phase. And then that changed with some of the takeouts being closed for the winter. And it moved into a much more even phase in the second phase. I know I've talked with Diane a number of times at Huckleberry's, and it was a lifeline for her. And Scott Rowley used it. He saw a lot of Bucks, and so did his wife, and Bolt, and pretty much everybody. It was a good week. John Paul and I handed out checks, and it was a good thing, a good feeling to be able to take a few $100s to a whole bunch of merchants, once a week. And speaking from a personal thing, I mean, I have a new business that finally got off the ground in late August, in the Airbnb that I redid on, or I turned into an Airbnb on Central Street. And as I've told all of them numerous times, without you, I would suffer greatly, because if somebody comes and stays, they may like the building, but if they go home and say there's nothing there, it's not going to help me at all.
Yep.
So there's definitely, I have some self-interest as well. So
Any questions from anyone?
No, I just want to make a comment. I think Main Street really stepped up to the plate during this crisis, and it really showed. And just talking to several of the businesses, as pointed out by Rich, you could feel it, that it made a difference. And any program that makes a difference like that, we got to keep with. And I'm not familiar enough on 15 Central Street, Ron, but I'm sure it's going to be a good program on what you're trying to do. And it's
well, I don't know. I may have turned out lucky.
It's like
It's
anything
been
else.
full since the beginning. I think
You have a driving force. A driving force keeps moving things forward. That's where we want to be. We want to keep moving Main Street forward, so it's a good thing.
Well, there were a lot of people that wanted to get out of Dodge, and they found Bucksport. So
If there's no more comments, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
I don't know if we can vote or not. Can we, John Paul?
You don't. So for the clarification of Main Street Bucksport, the funds are available July 1st. Brooke is no longer going to be the executive director, so that does not preclude Mark. John Paul and Ron will not benefit monetary wise, so that does not also exclude them from this vote. If they feel as though they shouldn't vote, that's up to them. But in legality, Ron and John Paul will not pocket a dollar from this money, so technically it does not benefit them.
Plus, it's been made very clear what, what each position is here. And so any of the boards I've been on, when you show what's going on about your vote or whatever, you just ask, is there a problem? If there's no problem, you go ahead and vote. And that's what it sounds like to me.
Truth be known, it probably cost Ron and I money.
Yeah, I know it did me. I made a few donations.
Good, we want your vote then.
I was more than glad to do it. So
If you'd like to call that vote out again, Mark.
Sure. Why don't we, all in favor, put your hand up. Okay. All right. The next item is, you want to do the minutes right now?
If you wouldn't mind.
Yep, sure. Looking to approve the minutes for December, January, and February. Does anybody have a motion? Or
I'll make a motion.
Okay. I'll make a second. All in favor? And new business? I think this is where you're going to come in, Ron?
yeah, sure. So essentially, I presented this to the last board meeting we had at Main Street, and this that I sent them is something that I'm doing myself. And I thought that, a version of this might be a good way to proceed. Probably the way that I funded this would not be the way that I would recommend that the town do it, because I paid for the coupons up front regardless of whether they were turned in or not. And the reason is, one, I could have made another donation to the Bucks, or I could do something like this. But what I'm really trying to do here is I went around to a bunch of the downtown merchants and I proposed this $5 off coupon on a single $5 or more purchase. And then the reason I gave the stats on the Airbnb is just to give them an idea of how many coupons this might be. Well, in the first 6 months, we had 24 separate bookings. So I propose over the next 6 months, or until we have 24 more new bookings, when a new guest or group of guests arrive in one of the units, there are 3, what they would find is right now they get a little package of cookies, which I'm negotiating with Scott to buy them from him rather than buy a thing at Tate's at Hannaford, which is what we've done. I also put in there a little bit of maple syrup, which is another expensive hobby that I have. But it's just sort of a value added that when they show up, there's a little something there. Well, Jean had a business for 20 years of doing wedding flowers. The business is closed. She's retired, but the flowers are still here. So during the season, we put in a little bouquet of flowers too when they come. And so what I wanted to do was I currently leave menus for the restaurants and little business cards and stuff for some of the businesses. But I really wanted something more as a driver to those businesses. So I made up these coupons, which I went and proposed to them, that if I got like 10 businesses from 10 separate businesses, I would leave one coupon from each of those businesses in a little welcome to Bucksport package for those tenants when they came. And literally, because it's a $5 coupon and the limit where it works is $5 or more, they could go down to the Friars and get a couple of cookies. Well, they'd have to put 2 cookies together. They don't have to. And if they added up to $5, they'd get them for free. So it's sort of like Bucks, or if they bought something for $10, it would work a little bit like Bucks. They'd get it for $5. And the way I proposed to do it to them was, look, I'll come in and buy from you. I'll bring you in 24 coupons, and I'd want you to sign those, and I would buy them from you for $3 a piece. So I would give each of them upfront $72. So their total exposure, if all 24 coupons came into the store and were used, and they all only spent the $5, would be $2 a piece, and it would take 6 months probably for these to come in. Of course, it's highly unlikely that all of them are going to be turned in. So I gave an example of if half of them were turned in, they would discount those 12 items, a total of $60, but they would have my $72 to offset that. So they'd actually make $12. Okay? And they'd have sort of a little donation from me. So I have no idea how many would get used. The idea is to drive people to those businesses, but also that they would, they just paid me a bunch of money to stay there, that they would say, wow, this is cool. I get some cookies from Alexander's Kitchen, and I would get, or what is Scott's name?
Edward's Kitchen.
Edward's Kitchen. And, I get something from the Friars. It's sort of, and this is a cool little town. So that would work for me. I would chalk up the $72 as $720 if I have 10 merchants over 6 months would be advertising. So if you took the same concept and did it slightly different, and you did it in 2 ways, you put together a little welcome. There was a email that went to the board members that I explained how it worked, and I'm just going to read it to you because it's pretty short. And Rich didn't send that, I think, along. You didn't forward the whole email, did you, Rich?
I don't believe so.
No, I'll just... So I wrote, I'm sending you this specifically because I think this idea could be expanded and reshaped to maybe become the next Bucks effort. Here's a couple of initial thought starters. We know that Fort Knox has a large number of day trippers during the season. If we could put together a, quote, spend a day in Bucksport package to be handed out to certain Fort Knox visitors that includes similar coupons to downtown businesses in town. So and I talked with Dean at length about this, and you wouldn't pass, so you put together, say it's 10, say it's 14, $5 off coupons. It would be up to the merchants if it would be for as low as a $5 item. Of course, I think it's got more value that way because somebody could get something for nothing, which might motivate them to go over there. But they may want to say for a $10 purchase, a single $10 purchase or more. And Dean and I sort of collectively agreed that the best way to distribute those, he has people that give tours and they ask lots of questions like, where can I eat? What's there to do around here? So we thought they could be distributed by those people. Say, hey, well, we've got these spend a day in Bucksport coupons where you can actually go over there, go to these restaurants and merchants, and if you pick out a $5 or more item, you're going to get $5 off. And they can do the math and see that they might get something. Or in the gift shop, they strike up a lot of conversations and get asked the same thing. Both of us agreed we wouldn't hand them out in the booth to everybody because you got no control over it. Well, you could track these, you could make them good for that day. So you would know right away if they got used or not. And the funding would be the same. We would ask the merchants to cover $2 of it on them so they would have skin in the game. And the $3 possibly could be funded by the town for monies that they might have spent supporting other groups. Rich thought this might be a reasonable use. I know Sue had set that limitation, I think, as 1% of tax receipts. Is that correct, Rich?
1% of the, yes, 1% of the, I believe, revenue from the year before?
Well, I think tax revenue is what she said, but maybe overall revenue.
Or was it
I don't think so.
overall budget, wasn't it?
1% of the budget.
1% of the budget, which is probably not more than the $28,000 that's been requested this year. Before we had the problem of too many requesting funds. Now we don't really have as many groups that are out there trying to move the town along. So we could also go out and try to raise funds for it, but we did notice in the last round that there was a little bit of donation fatigue in town, since we'd already raised close to the better part of $28,000 from merchants and private citizens. So that would be one way to do a set of coupons. And the merchants would only be paid when the coupon was turned in. Versus mine, they were paid for all of them up front, regardless of whether they were used or not. In other words, in my scheme, if none of them ever got used, they just got $24 from 15 Central Street LLC, which I'm gladly give to them to support them. So, and the other idea is to use the coupons, in town the way we did Bucks. And one way you might do that, I'll just read you that. The other idea is to have Main Street Bucksport distribute an initial coupon to local citizens. And that coupon would be different than these others. They would be good at all of these merchants that signed up, just like the Bucks. And then when they use it at one of those businesses, this kind of wild card coupon, that business gives them another coupon at a different business. So in other words, let's say they went into McLeod's and they used that $5 coupon. Then McLeod's would have some coupons from Huckleberry's. And they would give those people, well, great, you used your coupon, here's another one for $5 off, a $5 purchase or more, and you can use it down the street at Huckleberry's. And then if they used it at Diane's, she could give them one to Friars and so on, so they were used in a chain around town, and it'd be sort of a cross-pollination of businesses. I think that's good because that would show anybody that's in town that the merchants are all acting in concert with each other and supporting each other. And again, you could date these coupons for a relatively short period of time so you'd know if they're used or not. And you could experiment on how often you give out the coupon, when it ends, when the sort of round robin stops and you start it over again. I actually even came up with a name for it. Anyway, the other idea was to have Main Street distribute an initial coupon to local citizens. Again, similar to those I'm using, good at a group of businesses. And then when they use it at one of the businesses, that business gives them another coupon good at a different business. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Say this happened in April, May, and June, we could call it Bucksport Be Buzzin' Cross-Pollination Sale. I have bees too, so I think about bees. But I think it would keep the spirit moving. And the beauty of it compared to Bucks is that it's only coupons turned in, say they were turned in at a 50% rate. You could give out a lot of coupons that could be used, and a lot that would expire. And once the buzz started, back to the bees, you might see they're turned in. Now, Bucks, because people had skin in the game, they purchased them for $10. Got turned in at like 94%. There were some that never got turned in, but not a lot. So that's sort of the idea of how you keep a Bucks going. There's all other types of spins you could put on it. You could have people buy the initial coupon for $1, so they've got a little skin in the coupon. You could have the merchants split them differently. If they say they went to, you got to get a $10 or more, you could say, you do the $3, we'll do the $2. But they definitely, at $5, they're giving a 40% discount that they're paying for the $2. Now, did I just confuse everybody, or did that make sense?
That made sense to me. Anybody have questions for Ron?
But let's just say you got the same $32,000. That would fund over 10,000 coupons.
Ron,
So, if you ran a program like this from April through the end of the summer, that could drive a lot of business. And I think that's the point of it, both internally from people in the town, which ultimately you need more people going into all those local businesses. And I think by doing it those two ways, and you could measure it very quickly, so it would be easy to tinker with it to try to get it, more successful.
A question just came up in my mind. Normally we're talking about things at this meeting for next year's budget. This is more looking for funds available right now.
Well, it is if we wanted to start it right away.
Right. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to start it until July 1st.
Right.
So
The other thing I would point out is this is just pure and simple guerrilla marketing. And we've just adopted, or the town has adopted, I should say, a marketing and branding plan. You couldn't make up a better way to try to start marketing the town, both internally and externally, than something like this. I mean, you can get all the consultants in the world and make plans and say you ought to spend this money advertising, that money advertising, but you could spend $10,000 or $15,000 on a program like this, or you could spend $2,000 on a program like this and get it started and just see what kind of, success you have. Now, Dean can't start until May 1st. That's when he opens. But you certainly could start the other side of it, the April, May, and June, right away. And you could still go back to some of the other merchants, the more successful ones. And I can tell you for sure that there are businesses that the pandemic has been a true boon for. One of them is my old company. I mean, and I know talking to the building supply places and, anything to do with, the trades seems to have done really, really well. I have a project going now and everybody is totally jammed up, have been through the winter.
Yeah, Ron, if you could find a way to lower lumber prices, that would be great for me.
Hold on, Dan, you have a comment?
I have a question. Ron, have you seen this, a coupon system like this in any other town before? Or was this an original idea that you came up with? Or?
Well, let's say the round robin one, that idea is not mine. I've just sort of changed it around. Originally, when we heard about the Main Street program, there was a young fella that came over from Gardner who spoke at the Alamo. I forget I think his name was Richard somebody, but he was Gardner's economic development. He had the same position as Rich does, director, and he also was head of the Main Street program. He was the executive director of the Main Street program. That's how those are set up. If we ever get to the next stage, part of the requirement is funding from the town because it's a joint effort. That's part of why we've had the meetings, because I think it's critical now that, that we're in sync with what the town does. And we talked about, they might even, in parts of the marketing program, come to Main Street and say, look, does this fit your mission? Can you do this? And we'll, sort of fund it if you'll take it on. So way back when he spoke that night, one of the things that he said they had done was he used an example like, I've seen your town, I've been over to the hardware store. Well, we did something similar. Somebody that wasn't in the downtown, but was a more established business. They went out there with a bunch of clipboards one day and they started surveying people that came in. So they might go to Jerry's and you'd say, why do you come here to Jerry's Hardware? Well, I'm from Castine and I really like the feel of it. So I come here rather than drive all the way to Ellsworth, because Jerry usually, he's an electrician, he knows it's a down home feel. Or it might be just somebody local that comes in, I come here. So he said what we did after they were done is we gave them a coupon for a business downtown. And it always struck me as like brilliant. You're trying to get these two parts of the town together. And we have a successful, high street in Ellsworth. Ours just happens to be on Route 1. And, most of those businesses have done okay during this. But the downtown suffered because, they're small and businesses come and go, and that just hasn't been the way. It's gone to malls, but malls are shrinking. And it's all shrinking back to downtown. So it's really important that we protect the ones that are there and nurture the environment so more can come in. I mean, before COVID, we didn't have any space left. And, Sue's idea, like, well, we're taking up a space on Main Street with this building, maybe we ought to get off it. But we need to make sure that we support these businesses now so we can get back to where that's important, that we need every space we've got. We've got a vacant space now. I mean, that one guy who wrote into the Enterprise was an excellent idea on that place in Bavaria, Illinois, that put on all those little pop-up shops. I mean, that would be great. Gene's been going to a place in Ellsworth that's sort of like that, a little pop-up shop that does cheesecakes, nothing else. And it's all in the honor system, and they have like 30 different ones. And every time we go to Ellsworth, we come home with slices of 2 or 3 kinds of cheesecake. But that's what we need, and the more we can get them working together, then the support of these programs goes away once they get established enough. But we got to keep giving them a lifeline now, and that is money well spent.
And Ron, to expound on, think of where John Paul was going with this, he's right. What we were doing at the beginning of this meeting, these funds that the folks presented and you presented for Main Street wouldn't be available till July 1st. I think John Paul is thinking, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, John Paul, but maybe how can we get this funded now? Do we use TIF monies? Do we ask the council for money?
Well, I just, it was a question I had in my mind and I thought I knew the answer, but, yeah, and like Ron said, maybe we test it now with much less money and build something into the budget next year, based on the success of it, for more money.
I mean, we can go back to, we got a sizable donation the first round from Tradewinds, and we've had support both times from the credit union. And, you know, they have self-interest in this too. They need businesses as clients. And, you know, Tradewinds, I don't know. I mean, maybe he's been really busy, but it seems like there's a lot of competition in that space in town. And we certainly can put it back out to the public too. I mean, but
you talked to Dean at the fort quite a bit about this?
Yeah, he's really, because what we would do with Dean is what he's talking about. We'd cross-pollinate so that, you know, he sends over people, and then people coming into the stores and shops and restaurants, we would give something back to get them to go over there to his events, because he's going to be the event driver in the short term.
So my question is, can he hand out a packet when they buy tickets? When the cars come
Well, he
Can he
can't.
hand out
He
packets?
could, but it wouldn't make any sense to either of us, because that's just like, you know, I don't know how many people, but say 500 people come in a day. There's some people that aren't going to be motivated to use it. They're there for a picnic and they're going home. You're better off to start when you have some kind of idea that somebody's shown interest already. Because now it may turn in that it's really popular and a lot of people divert. But if you can't divert the ones that are already pre-motivated to do it, you're probably going to be less likely to do the hit or miss.
Well, I approach it more like a flyer, like in a retail store, where you're passing it out. They don't know they're interested until they start going through it. You know, maybe one person in the party doesn't want to walk around the fort, starts looking at where they can go to eat or whatever they can go shopping. I was just looking at it from that point of view. When they have the packet, at least they got something. So
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend doing it that way to start, because we all know what flyers are. They're sort of, a lot of them end up in you just go to the post office.
I agree with you.
This
on
is
that.
this is more, you know, he's got a sales force of guides, and he's really willing to do it. And what he did say about the booth is, it's just hand it. They don't have time to say a word.
Right. That's why I was thinking if they passed it out to them, or if there's an incentive we can do for the volunteers to talk about it to move it forward. You know, somebody has to have an incentive somewhere. There has to be something that grabs it and not just.
Well,
hope that
here's
they
the
have.
incentive. It's just like, think about me. Why am I putting that packet in my thing? Because it's value added.
Yes.
I'm adding value. I also,
disagree.
we have a house booklet, and it's progressing slowly. It's all laminated. But I've gone to all the merchants and I say, yeah, I'm putting your menu and stuff, but what I need is sort of write a little letter about your history and who you are. You all put some of it in your menus, and so that you personalize it. Because people, I can tell you from experience, people buy things when they like who they're dealing with and they like the idea of who they're dealing with. Price is way down the list. And who doesn't get frustrated when they go into a big box store and you look around and there's nobody to talk to.
Uh, the other thing I think is that $5 isn't a whole lot to someone who hasn't already shown an interest in going to Bucksport. But if someone's talking to you and say, geez, yeah, there's all this stuff going on over in Bucksport. By the way, here, if you go there, you can get $5 off. We're going to have a lot higher success rate on it. And
Yeah,
I think you need to market this to your higher potential for success.
you're right, John Paul. You also would want a little things to do sheet along with it. Like museum in the streets, the walkway, eventually a papermakers museum. I mean, all that kind of stuff makes it a destination that has value. Things to do, things to see. I mean, and then the internal part of the town is just to keep going what's already going, so that people find value in what we've got right here in town.
I guess, Ron Wood, since we're really talking about primarily something to put in the budget next year, maybe, is there any way having some funds available this year? Rich?
Well, it's a little risky, John Paul, but one of the things we could do, I think our PPP loan comes through relatively soon. We could certainly talk the board about diverting some of that if the town would, match it, just to get started. I know
I can-
Rich has.
That question was more for Rich.
Yeah, John, I don't believe I have it in my personal budget, but I think there's some monies that maybe even left over still from the Silvernail funds. I'll check with Sue to see what's left from that. That might be a good use of those funds. Are you talking a nominal amount, or do you want me? What
Well,
figure
think
would
about
you
it,
talk
it's $3 a whack. So if you had $3,000, you could put out 3,000 coupons, but if you date them not too long, that could be 10,000 coupons.
Right.
Because, they don't get turned in. I mean, I wouldn't make them like bucks. They should be for a day or a week, or you experiment with that. I mean, my coupons were only good during the person's stay. I mean, and you can see in that thing that I sent, there was only one couple that came from Maine. The rest of them all came from everywhere. And, I know they've been around to a lot of the shops and stores and things like that. And I did have a couple of people that were here trying us out, looking for a place to live in Maine. Which really, you go back to the marketing plan, we were looking for 36 families. Undoubtedly, myself and the other Airbnbs in town are going to find some of those people. I mean, they're people that want what we've got. And if they go into a friendly store that I'll give you one example. If you just take the way McLeod's did their takeout, can you imagine what that seems like for somebody from Brooklyn, New York? There's a water pitcher full of money for the tips, and it used to be out on Main Street with their bag and their name. It's ready for you, Mark. I mean, they don't, can you imagine they run into that cheesecake place in Ellsworth? I mean, it's like the self-serve vegetable stand alongside it. You saw what happened in, where was it, Skowhegan, somewhere over there in Piscataquis County. The young family that had the farm, and a guy drove into it and wrecked it, and it was all fresh vegetables, just you go in and self-serve. And I don't know what happened, why he did it, but he got mad and destroyed it. And some of the people that went there started a Kickstarter campaign, and they raised, I don't know how much it's up to now. When that Bangor Daily News article was there, it was $28,000.
So what if we talk about $3,000 now and then build something into the budget for next year based on the success of a trial program?
Remember, there's two prongs to this. So we could certainly do the one, you can't do Dean's, really. I mean, in 6 months, I could give out 24. I'm giving out my own anyway, so, but the internal one, you know, it could add up quick if it's popular, because, you know, basically it's this round robin, and you'd have to figure out the mechanics of, you know, so Georges are going to get handed out pretty quick, and then you're going to have to wait and see if the ones at Huckleberry's get used, and then so on until it goes. So you'd have to figure out a way so it's fair.
Would you think it would be okay if I checked to see if we could grab $3,000 for Main Street to run the program how they think
Absolutely.
would work the best?
Yeah, we'd be glad to. I really want to do something next, and we'd figure it out and come back and tell you exactly, you know, what the plan was.
And for budget purposes for next year, Ron, do you have a dollar figure that you're putting forward?
Well, no, I think that's a tough call. What I would do is, you're going to have to come up with some kind of budget for that marketing plan, okay? So I would carve it out of that and say, because look, this could be, I've had plenty of flops in my day as well as successful promotions, and I couldn't really tell you if this will work or not. It's just sort of like Bucks. Bucks started out kind of slow, you know, but some people caught on to it, and they were there every week. I mean, I spend $10, I get 20. It's a pretty simple concept. You know, this one is, I spend $5 and I get something for free. I mean, that won't really work for the merchants, but, you know, that part of it makes it attractive. Because then they're giving a 40% discount on some little item. But that's when it's up to them to not be discouraged by that, but just, hey, we'll shop around. We got some other great things too, you know. I don't think people would do that. There might be a few, but. And you can change that $5 to $10. Then their maximum exposure is a 20% discount.
Rich, what if we, did like you said, see if you could come up with $3,000 now, and this isn't like Main Street's asking for money.
No.
It's Main Street's willing to spend their time administering it, and I see, the other vote today, does the economic development support this concept? And then it's not really a group asking for money, so it doesn't have this how much money that is, like things tonight. But do we support this concept, and then down the road, before the budget gets finalized, we come to a figure based on, more information that we gather.
Yeah, and what I would say, Rich, is we would only use the money for two things. Hard costs to maybe print the coupons, and the other would be coupon redemption. We would not, we've made a request that'll help us, stay alive with administration and just general funding. This would be more to keep, which to me is the most important thing, is to keep something going.
I think how I'll word that, John Paul, is that the Economic Development Committee wants to move forward with this program. We don't have the expertise to administer it, and Main Street Bucksport has agreed to administer it, and the Economic Development Committee would like to use some of its funds to have Main Street Bucksport administer it, so that way it doesn't seem like Main Street's coming back for more. Does that sound?
That sounds good. And then
Yep.
additional programs should be factored into whatever you're going to do, the town's going to do for their marketing program.
And then I think it's people's responsibility to go out to merchants and say, you know, you've had 2 rounds of bucks. You know, there's an idea being thrown around about a modification for a 3rd round. You know, is this something that's going to help your business? It's, you know, don't take it from Ron and I. I think everybody has that responsibility to go out and speak to the merchants and see if this is a good thing for the town to be spending their money on.
I agree.
I agree. So do we need a motion for what you just said, Rich?
Yeah, I think that'd be good because we want it to come from the Economic Development Committee. So I think it would be good if the Economic Development Committee puts a motion that Rich seeks use of $3,000 from the Silver Nail funds or alternative fund to run a program which would be administered by Main Street Bucksport.
I'll make that a motion, what you just said.
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Okay.
Sorry to hold
Thank you.
everybody up, but it's
So
still in
Rich,
me, the whole promotion thing, so.
So Rich, what would be the timing of being able to then get something else built in next year's budget?
The marketing budget already had to be turned into Sue prior to March 1st. So I've submitted my budget to Sue for next year based off of the last Economic Development Committee meeting. I can see if I can make an adjustment to that because I do not believe the council has received the packets yet. If they have, I can ask if I can make an addition because I do have one other addition I'd like to make, and I'd like to make this committee aware of it as well. So just a couple of things. One, I hired Northeast Cable Company to take down the
Christmas in July, Rich.
Yes,
You could've
the wreath.
waited.
Yes, thank you, the wreaths. And moving forward, I'm going to go that route. I will handle the taking down of the Christmas wreaths, and it will be 2 months earlier. Also, the group had requested more marketing based towards the marina and the town dock. And I didn't waste any time in that. We didn't use much advertising dollars this year because of the pandemic. So I am going to show you the ad that Scott Rowley created. It's going in the Down East magazine. And it will be part of their summer edition. Can everybody see that?
Yeah, nice.
Yep.
So this is going to be to guide folks to our marina, which it's 90+% full, but we have room on the town dock as well. This is different. We've been using the same advertisement since I've been here, so I asked Scott to create something a little different. Scott does this on as another one of his businesses and had seeked interest in doing work for the marketing plan, so I thought this would be a good way to see how it was to work with Scott. I didn't give him very much time to do this because I didn't get word of this special magazine till last minute, and he came through for me. It needed to be in Friday, and he got it to them on Friday for me. So what I've added to this is something similar to what Ron has said, is when they come into the dock, and they mentioned this Down East magazine ad, they'll go visit the harbor master, and he'll give them a voucher to go to the Penobscot Narrows Observatory. It's $2.50. It's a way for us to track how this program works. But the kicker is they have to pay to get into Fort Knox State Park. So They pay to get into the park, but they get a voucher to go to the top of the observatory from the town. So it's kind of a we're sending people to the observatory. That's a big draw to get people to come to Bucksport. So let's get them to come by boat, and we'll reward them for coming by boat to go out to the observatory, and they still pay to get into the park. So it helps that way as well. It's just a way Dean's been scratching our back. It's a way for us to do that for the floor, and a way for us to measure. And the
How are you
other
gonna get
idea,
'em there, Rich?
what's that?
How are you going to get them there?
We have a courtesy van.
Oh, nice.
That's one way, but here's the other idea. Our harbor master, Mike Ormsby, we had folks who stayed on the town dock on a catamaran for several months of the summer, and they wanted to go to the Miles Lane trails, and they asked if we had bikes they could rent. Mike has checked with the insurance company through MMA, and it looks like this is something we can do. So I'm going to seek funding for some bicycles that can be rented from the marina. It'll be a revenue account for us. We're looking at 4 regular bicycles and 2 electric bikes. So I think that's going to bring, I commended Mike. That was a fantastic idea if we can make this work. And so I'm going to be seeking an adjustment to my funding to fund those bicycles. I think it'll be a huge addition. So if they don't want to take the courtesy van, they can take the bikes over there.
Is the courtesy
No.
van lettered?
It's not lettered. It's a former. It was one of the vans that belonged at the to the school. The school sold it to the town, and it's used for multiple purposes. The marina uses it in the summer, and the town garage uses it the rest of the year.
Well, I would recommend you get some funds and wrap it. More than just the marina. That is good money. We had that van program at Darlington. I think with the Y van up there we gave them.
Yes, you did. Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're trying to think of different ways to be creative down at the marina and the waterfront. And like I said, that project was spearheaded by our harbor master, and the council will see a request for bikes and some helmets. And I think that'll really attract more business down there.
Nice. So are we good on new business? Is there any other new business, Rich, that you have?
I didn't. I don't know if anyone on the committee does or any old business. I believe I took care of everything that was requested of me at the last meeting, the reefs and marketing to the marina.
Okay. Well, if there's nothing else, item 5 is scheduled next meeting. Did you have a time in mind, Rich? Date?
The 12th would work for me if it works for the committee. It's a Monday night, 6 p.m.
That works for me.
I think. Well, it's Zoom, so
Okay. So we'll do the 12th, and item 6 is adjournment. Just need a motion.
I
So
move
moved.
adjourn.
I'll second. Everybody in favor? Good night, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Dan, thanks for joining us.
What do we got?
Great job, Ron.
Oh, thanks, Kathy.
I think it's very interesting. I think it will work well.
Yeah, I hope so. Well, we'll try something else if it